Welcome back, or welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a super late video on the secret of the Mimic. I'm sorry, by the way. However, in my defense, I got super depressed, procrastinated, and then I got very, very ill. Anyway, this video will aim to lay out a rough timeline of events and the new lore that we get from the game. Now, I won't waste any more time. My opinion on the game will be at the very end of this video. Now, let's get started. Quick note, most of these events won't have years attached to them, simply because I don't know them, and some of the info may be out of order because at the time of writing this, I am working on limited sources. It's literally been a week when I wrote the script. Some of it's updated, but I apologize in advance. And if you enjoyed this video, then join my Discord, because I want to be able to have good communication with my fans, because I'm so good at this content creation stuff. Promise. So, starting off, Edwin meets Fiona, who is an ex-puppet voice actor, while they're both working at Murray's Costume Manor, which Edwin's dad owns. Fiona encourages Edwin to be more confident after interacting with him and learning about his first invention. They then seem to pretty quickly fall for each other, and they then have a child, David, in 1970, which is confirmed by doing some of the maths with the birthdays listed in game. Sometime after this, Edwin's dad dies, leaving his entire factory and all of the workers to Edwin, a man with seemingly no training to his own admission, so nepotism wins again. While in control of the factory, Edwin starts making his own designs, encouraged by Fiona, and a couple things happen in this time period, so I'm just going to list them here, hopefully in order. 1. Mr. and Mrs. Helpful are made, later inspiring the Helpy Bear that we all know and love and Markiplier hates. 2. Edwin invents recycling. I am not joking. I wish I was. 3. The workers start resenting Edwin due to him overwhelming them, causing them to start talking shit behind his back, and meaning that they all start gradually leaving over time, but more so towards the end. Will and Henry then commission Edwin's factory to make suits for Freddy and Bonnie, seemingly the Golden Freddy and Spring Bonnie Springlock suits. However, this seems to show that the original fabric suits, like Glitch Trap and the one shown in the Fredbear Singing Show poster, were actually made by William and Henry, because there is no trace of them in the factory, and Fazbear and Fazbear Entertainment already exists. Plus so do the posters, meaning a location must exist, seemingly Fredbear's family diner. Fiona designs Chica, and Edwin designs Foxy, although it seems like both of those may have been pre-existing characters that they then worked into the FNAF design. They also make prototypes of the Springlocks, specifically Bonnie and Freddy. However, based on the prototype's design, Springtrap's design, and the different versions of the Springlocks we see that were made by Edwin and seemingly made by William, it seems like they stole the ideas but not the actual suits that Edwin made, because there's a lot of differences happening that wouldn't make much sense if they had taken those. Edwin also makes Chica's Party World, which finally tells us what the hell Chica's Party World actually was this whole time. 1973. Fiona goes to Fall Fest after having a feeling that she needs to be there. However, this turned out to be a very unhelpful premonition, as she then dies in a fire, causing Edwin to spiral, making the M1 mimic, the Endo that we see throughout the games, to copy his wife and become her, which is most likely so he doesn't lose her and so that David doesn't lose his mother. M1 is then called F10-N4, or Fiona, which is what I'm going to be calling her, but the subtitles will say that. We know this happens in 1973 because David is 3 when Fiona dies, and he was born in 1970, like I mentioned. Now, something to note here, which will be expanded on in a future video because I really like Fiona, and the Robo Fiona. It seems like there might be some of her remnant, spirit, something like that, in the F10N4, because Edwin himself admits to Robo Fiona that he doesn't understand how it's worked so well, because all his other attempts in the future don't work. So there is a chance there's some spooky spirit shit going on. Fazbear Entertainment, so by proxy William and Henry, then drop Edwin and Murray's Costume Manor, with no given reason, seemingly so that William can avoid having to pay Edwin by making Edwin's workers steal the designs he made and send them to Will, with promises of managing establishments and other positions of power. Due to this stress, and the factory failing, Edwin becomes more neglectful to his son and the Mimic due to him focusing on the factory, and he starts spiraling into paranoia. However, for the record, there is evidence of Edwin always having been neglectful to both the living Fiona and David, with him forgetting birthdays, ignoring Fiona, letting David play in the factory despite the dangers and telling his lawyer it's fine, and many other things that would make CPS cry. However, Fiona's death and the failure of the factory definitely didn't help. 1975. David dies after being hit by a car due to Edwin and M1 not watching him. Edwin then makes the M2 program, which inhabits the M1 endo, because Fiona convinces him to, seemingly to mimic David. However, she doesn't say that to him, because when the M1 endo running the M2 program starts to copy David instead of Fiona, and starts mimicking his voice and his actions and taking his white tiger plush and holding it like he did, it causes Edwin to completely flip out and beat the crap out of M2. Breaking off his legs, infecting him with agony, maybe, or just causing him to mimic the violence. Fiona then tells Edwin to make the cradle.exe to help calm the mimic, which by the way, seems to be the mixer's terminal, but I'm going to be calling it the cradle because that's what it's called in this game. Fiona then moves out of the M1 endo and into the cradle. She then starts acting as the security system for the factory, managing basically everything. The M1 mimic, which I will just be calling the mimic, then later rebuilds its own legs due to Edwin refusing to remake them. Then, an unknown accident happens in Edwin's house, which causes him to be trapped under rubble. He then begs the mimic to help him, with the mimic taunting him with his own dismissal of David, in his voice. Edwin then seemingly dies, although it's never specified whether or not he survives. However, we are led to believe that he does die, which would mean that this version of events is different from what happens in the Tales of the Pizzaplex books, meaning there's a chance that we have a similar situation to the Silver Eyes trilogy, where the books exist just to fill in lore and not directly mirror the events that are happening. So basically, it's not one timeline, it's more parallel. So events fill in for each other, but that it's not a one-to-one, because in the books, Edwin survives up until the Pizzaplex. 1979. Now, this is when Secret of the Mimic, the game, actually begins. We play as Arnold, a horrifically overworked Fazbear worker who's just gotten off a 36-hour shift sent by Dispatch, who seems to be the original hand unit voice, to go reclaim Edwin's inventions for Fazbear to snatch up now that he's gone. They specifically want him to retrieve the Mimic's blueprints so that they can steal the mimicking endos for their future things. But as soon as we get into the factory, Fiona starts luring him in for her own agenda, mimicking the voice of Dispatch to give us orders. By the way, I'm going to start referring to Arnold as us, and sometimes as he, because I didn't write the script well, and I keep forgetting to switch when I'm talking. I do apologize, so it might get a little confusing. She's trying to get us to go get Edwin so that he can stop the mimic by fixing the mimic, which would return her quote-unquote son to her and fix her family. Now, the three endings all seem like they could be canon based on how we see the mimic in the future, so I'm just going to go through each of them here. 1. The bad ending. In this ending, Arnold listens to the fake Dispatch at the end of the game when she demands him to give over the data diver, which uses different permissions to open doors and access terminals and the mimic. It's a bit like the Faz wrench, but arguably more powerful. However, the mimic access will be important later, worry not. After giving up the data diver, Arnold leaves in the van and is contacted by the real Dispatch, who verbally berates him for losing contact with him, which is entirely Fiona's fault, and then promptly fires him. Arnold's unemployment thankfully doesn't last long though, because the mimic hid in the van and jumps Arnold, killing him. Which seems a little unfair. I fear that my boy did not deserve this, he has suffered enough. 2. The good ending? Parachute.exe. In this ending, Arnold doesn't give up the data diver in this scene, and instead activates Parachute.exe, which allows him to escape the office that he's been locked in by fleeing through the vents. Fiona taunts and berates him, calling him a coward and a dog, while telling him that the mimic's gonna kill him, which isn't very nice. We then reach a room that mimics the FNAF 1 layout, filled with Edwin's prototype suits for the FNAF location that he'd been commissioned to make. After activating the Goodbye program, the mimic emerges out of a pile of parts, wearing a mashed together suit made of prototype pieces. After completing a puzzle and evading the mimic, we meet Mixes Fiona in her big boxy glory. She then tells us that we need to find Edwin, who is likely dead as I mentioned, and that she needs him to fix the mimic. She then tells us that she still loves Edwin despite everything that's happened. I don't understand why. Girl, you could do better. Arnold then downloads the Mimic Project schematics, which is what he'd been sent to do. He then goes up to the ruins of Edwin's house and activates the Cradle.exe program. The factory then suddenly starts burning down for no real reason, from what I can tell. And Fiona sends Edwin a message saying that she loves him and wants him to come help reunite their family. During this, Arnold is running for his life through a burning factory while being pursued by a very angry Mimic and a bunch of robo-abominations. So he's having a great time. He then escapes. However, this once again doesn't save Arnold because once again, the Mimic's stowed away, this time though on top of the van. He, once again, jumps Arnold, causing the van to crash. The Mimic then steals the data diver and leaves Arnold to die in the wreckage. Again, he doesn't deserve this. I feel like he didn't do anything wrong. 3. The secret ending. Moon.exe. Now, this is somehow the craziest ending, which is impressive considering you just heard the last one. So, in the game, there's an in-game game on the terminal called Moon.exe. Now I know what you're thinking. You said game too much, and I fully agree with you. But also, Steelwool really loves putting .exe on the end of everything in this game, and again, I agree. So, if you collect all of the in-game collectible items in the New Game Plus, and then play through the Moon.exe game with the Tiger Rock plush, Fiona gives you a glitched permission for your data diver, which allows you to access secret rooms in Edwin's house and collect these night tapes, which are a bedtime story program recorded for David. We then go into David's bedroom and start the bedtime story, which causes the Mimic to come out the closet. So proud of him for that, by the way, during Pride Month too. We then start the story with the help of Fiona and a recording of Edwin's voice. But the story starts glitching, so we have to complete a puzzle as he switches between his David personality and his I wanna murder you personality. Once we end the story, he starts glitching out and breaks down, letting us reset him with the glitched permission on the data diver. Once we reset him, he fully goes into the David personality, shrinking down fully into a 5-year-old-esque size, making him no longer violent as well. He then goes to bed, as Fiona tells him that she loves him and the Mimic powers off. As he does this, he mimics David to say I love you, which is kinda cute, but he's still freaky. Then the credits roll. Arguably this is the best ending, because Arnold suffers the least. Kind of. He still had to deal with everything else that happened, but you know, at least he lived this time. Now, time for my opinion. Which I know it isn't why you're here, but it's my video, so I don't know, let me live. So, I'll be honest, I actually kinda liked it. I went into this not liking the Mimic, and to be fair, I'm still not a massive fan of how he is in Ruin, but I actually quite like the Secret of the Mimics version. He got much more development, and he is way more interesting with the lore that's added by the game. Now, the game isn't perfect, you know, I'm not going to deny that. For one, stop making every scene transition fall into a fade out to black. Other than that, my only complaint would be how it doesn't really feel like an OG FNAF game, although I feel like that's only really because we don't have any of the office sections anymore, which, I'll admit, does make me kinda sad because I do think those would be pretty cool in a 3D setting. And honestly, I think it would work quite well in Secret of the Mimic, considering the whole hopping from suit to suit thing. Can you imagine trying to deal with that in an OG FNAF game setting? Trying to check the cameras and figure out which suit is alive? That'd be cool. I would have loved for a section like that. But, regardless, I do still think that the vibes of the original are still there to a degree. It's just evolved over time. The creepy suits, the sound design, the music did slap though, full credit to Steelwool there. Plus, the whole feeling of being hunted by something you can't stop. Honestly, I feel like some people are a bit too harsh. Sure, it is completely fine not to like the new stuff, or to just not care about it either way. But at least be chill about other people liking it. And with that, I'll wrap this up. Your reward for watching, of course. If you enjoyed this video, then like and subscribe so I know to make more. Check out my shorts or other videos if they interest you. And If you are in a place that is severely hot at the moment, I'm in the UK, stay safe, stay hydrated, and find every patch of shade you can. Have a wonderful day, I love you all very much, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye!